Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. We're going to talk a little Texas bowl prep. The on-campus bowl practices are done the next time the Longhorns are back on the practice field. It will be in Orlando ahead of the Citrus Bowl against Michigan on New Year's Eve. We'll talk all about bowl prep here in just a minute. I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Von Lane. We'll tell you more about Von Lane here in a little bit. But CJ, let's go ahead and talk about bowl prep. As I said, the on-campus practices are done with Pete Kwiatkowski out. Johnny Nansen's going to call the defense for the bowl game. Will Muschamp has been helping out at practice. We'll do that in a second. Jabbar Jalouk will be coaching in the bowl game, and then there's a slew of opt-outs. We're trying to figure out who's where and how Texas will fill out a depth chart against Michigan. But, CJ, let's start talking about the Will Muschamp factor. He has been at practice. He will not coach officially in the bowl game. So what exactly, CJ, has Will Muschamp been doing since he was hired?
Yeah, a lot of observing, and I'll even call it hands-on observing because, look, he's been very interactive at practice with both the linebacking unit and the safeties. Of course, that's where Sark said that he would get his start is with the safety room at the moment. But, look, it's a lot of trying to figure out what type of skills and instincts and traits he's going to be working with guys that will be returning to the Texas defense in 2026. But let's keep in mind, this will be Johnny Nansen calling the plays. It's still going to be the PK scheme, if you will, given that it's tough to install a brand new defense with calls and formations and everything in that regard in the next, 2 weeks. So right now it's going to be Johnny Nansen calling the PK defense. But look, this is a great learning opportunity for Will Muschamp and the Texas defense to learn what he's going to be working with next fall.
CJ, when we look at that defensive depth chart, Michael Taft, Malik Muhammad, Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, Ethan Burke, all out for this game. None of those guys will be around. So of the position move, CJs, they've tried to figure out how to make this depth chart work to get there. And again, as Sark said, the press conference most recently, they're down to 65 scholarship players for this bowl game between NFL departures and guys headed to the transfer portal. CJ, what moves has stood out to you the most in terms of who's lining up where on defense as they try to get this thing right for Michigan?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the linebacker spot, right? No Trey Moore, no Anthony Hill. They're off to the league. Leon Lafau surprisingly hit the portal as well. Texas down 3 of its really 4, maybe 5 deep at its rotation in the linebacking position. You're going to be tasked with using guys that haven't played the position a whole lot this year or using some other players from other positions at the linebacking unit. And that's where Texas has gone so far in bowl prep. I've been told Jordan Johnson-Rubel has spun down from safety to get reps inside the box at the linebacking position. And that's very unique because, look, Jordan Johnson-Rubel, only about 5'9", about 200 pounds. He's got enough mass there, but ultimately it's a brand new unit, a brand new scheme, brand new position for Jordan Johnson-Rubel to ultimately be tasked with playing the linebacking spot. But that's what you have whenever you only have 3 true scholarship guys expected for this bowl game. You got to make hay with other guys to spin down and pick up that load.
CJ, the 2 guys on offense that I think are really worth mentioning here, with DeAndre Moore, thought he was going to the draft, but he's going to enter the transfer portal. Regardless, he was not going to play in this bowl game. And then you've got some room at running back now with CJ Baxter hitting the portal. We knew Jarrett Gibson has been gone, but and obviously Ricky Stewart hasn't been with the team for a minute. But you got Dalen McCutcheon filling in at wide receiver, and then Michael Terry at running back. CJ, sounds like those 2 guys really took advantage of the opportunity that's been given to them.
Yeah, I think so. And for Dalen McCutcheon, this is nothing new, right? This is going back to the spring when there wasn't a Ryan Wingo or DeAndre Moore on the field for the Longhorns in spring practice. It was Dalen McCutcheon that you heard a lot about, especially with that first unit. As someone who enrolled early in January, he took over that slot spot in the spring and did very well. And obviously that was something that the staff valued and trusted, and that's why he got on the field immediately as a true freshman. That looks to be the point, and right now I'm expecting Dalen McCutcheon to start for the Longhorns in the bowl game against Michigan. Additionally, Michael Terry, really interesting because the folks that I've talked to behind the scenes look at Michael Terry and say, hey, he's probably going to stick at running back. If Jabbar Jalouk likes him, this is a very talented running back, a very talented runner with the ball in his hands. Michael Terry has all the vision that's necessary. He has the size, and he can make hay with the ball in his hands. So right now it sounds like he's really impressing at the running back position, and I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks there moving into 2026.
CJ, Michigan is they've only had 3 opt-outs at this point, but obviously player opt-outs are probably the least of the Wolverines' concerns right now, given the Sharon Moore situation. What have you heard as far as the mentality Texas has? We heard Sark talk about kind of the structure of the on-campus bowl practices, took the first 6 or 7 practices, really made them developmental practices. Then before the team got released for the holiday break, it was more about Michigan prep. But what's been the mentality, the mindset of the guys that are left from the 2025 team at this point?
Yeah, look, defensively, a lot of it now, given the change to Will Muschamp from PK, is, hey, I need to put my best foot forward. I need to get the best impression that I possibly can for the new play caller, because ultimately Will Muschamp will have the authority to go out there and find new pieces in the portal if he doesn't seem the guys on campus to be a fit for him. So that's going to be really important moving forward. And of course, he's gotten an idea. He's watched the tape. He's talked with Steve Sarkisian about guys that he likes. Look, it's hard to look at a John McDonald and say, hey, I don't like this guy, right? But who else kind of joins that conversation and becomes a big-time piece for this defense moving forward? It remains to be seen.
All right, CJ, we'll get back to talking about the Texas Bowl prep for Michigan and the Citrus Bowl here in just a minute. But right now, I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Von Lane. The holidays are here, which means travel season is officially here. But it doesn't have to be stressful. Whether you're heading to Austin, whatever you're heading to Austin for, Von Lane makes getting there easy. You'll board in minutes at a hotel terminal located just minutes from your destination and settle into one of 22 oversized seats. More space, more comfort, no crowds. Enjoy Wi-Fi, snacks, beverages, and a hot towel service on every trip. And on select routes, savor complimentary meals delivered right to your seat. Von Lane takes the grind out of regional travel so you can focus on what really matters, the people and the experiences waiting at the end of the ride. Book today at vonlane.com and use the code OTF25. That's OTF25 for $20 off your first ride. Von Lane is a private jet on wheels and now serving Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Plano, the Woodlands, Nashville, Memphis, Atlanta, and Knoxville. CJ, you look at this Texas offense, and I did think it was interesting when Sark was talking about the decision to move on from PK and hire Will Muschamp. He said he didn't like the way the defense was trending, but he liked the way the offense was trending over the last few weeks. And you look at where this group is now, you'll have Ryan Wingo for the bowl game. You'll have Emmett Mosley, basically your entire wide receiver core, except DeAndre Moore, Trey Wisner coming off of a $155 against Texas A&M rushing in the regular season finale. What are you expecting from this offense, CJ, against the Michigan defense?
Yeah, look, I'm hoping for much of the same, and that's against A&M. They grinded out points. Against Arkansas, it was high-flying. Against Georgia, look, they got stuck in the mud. But ultimately, when you add in that Vanderbilt game as well, there's more positives than I think there were negatives, right? And the Georgia game obviously just got away from them. But look, you saw Arch grow into the quarterback that you hoped he would become by the end of the 2025 season. Now it's about continuing to parlay that into what he will become in 26, Jeff. And I know that we've talked a little bit about some of the opt-outs for Michigan. Look, no Jayshon Barnum in this game, right? Michigan will be down their 2 best pass rushers for this bowl game against Texas. The one thing that gives me a lot of optimism and hope is this is another opportunity for Texas and Arch Manning to face a quality defense with NFL level calling on the coordinator's perspective, but also NFL level talent, kind of assuming that not all of them opt out. But point is, it's another great opportunity to take that step forward for Arch. So I'm looking to see that connection grow between the 3 sophomore wide receivers. We'll see what Jack Injuries does in this game as well. But I'll even throw it right back to you because, look, we know right now that the offensive line for Texas is expected to play. Right? All 5 starters are practicing at the moment. And for Arch to remain protected, that's obviously a big key. He's really good when he is. In a game like this, knowing that both tackles are set to return or likely to return to Texas in 2026, is there anything specifically for you that you're hoping to come away with saying, okay, as long as the quarterback's upright and healthy, you can put together as potent an offense under Arch Manning that we've seen for Texas in 26?
Yeah, the main thing I want to see on offense, I want to see Ryan Wingo start to take another step. And we've talked a lot about that here on the channel. Look, Texas is going to go into the portal looking for wide receiver help, but I just think, CJ, the price tag for those number one type wide receivers is just going to be too steep. And I think the money, quite frankly, would be better spent elsewhere. But you can still find, look, there's tons of quality wide receiver depth in the portal that you don't necessarily need a top end guy to get by and to get what you need. It's going to be about evaluation and fit. And I think they can find a guy, but this to me is about Ryan Wingo taking that next step to being that kind of blue chip wide receiver that he came into Texas with us having the idea he could be. It's time to sit at the head of the table now. He is the featured piece in that wide receiver room with DeAndre Moore gone. So you've got some veterans in that room, but I want to see Ryan Wingo take a step forward. And in the same vein, CJ, look, this was Anthony Hill's defense last season, and it's been a minute since Texas has been in this position where after the regular season, you're really turning the page to the following season, because you don't do that when you're in the playoff. But this is Colin Simmons' defense now. You know, Michael Taft and Anthony Hill led this thing, but again, talk about your turn to sit at the head of the table, CJ. I think that's what it is right now for Colin Simmons. The production is there, but I think the presence needs to be there. And when you look at the Texas defense in terms of not just his production, but the presence, the leadership, it's got to be number one at the forefront.
I'll tell you what you just said at the back end, making it your defense last year, right? Anthony Hill, a big piece of it. It was Michael Taft, right, who sat there and said, whatever happens for this team, it falls onto my shoulders, essentially. Does that become, almost synonymous with what we see for Colin Simmons? And how does a Will Muschamp's intensity, passion, fire, whatever you want to say on the sideline, Jeff, how does that then triculate down to the team as well? Because, look, again, I'm a big PK fan. I thought from an X's and O's perspective, he was as good as maybe anyone you'd find on the defensive coordinator side in college football in 2025, right? His body of work spoke for itself. But there's a level of intensity that's required on the defensive side of the ball. And I think with Muschamp, compared to that of PK, it's going to be night and day with the intensity level rising under Will Muschamp. Does that bring out more from a Colin Simmons or a Ty Anthony Smith or a Jelani McDonald, right? So that's something I'm really interested to see. And who knows what kind of, fiery, emotions we get in this bowl game. But ultimately, I'm most excited to see that kind of embedded with this Texas defense.
Yeah, CJ, let's wrap this up with the itinerary once the team gets to Orlando, and once you lay out kind of what it's like in terms of a practice schedule. I think you really realize, the important stuff was done before the team left Austin and broke away for the holidays.
Yeah, definitely. Texas will continue its bowl prep on December 27th. They'll leave for Orlando on the 26th. So they'll get Christmas in Austin or wherever folks want to spend their holiday. And then obviously the trip to Orlando on the 26th. They'll get on the field the 27th to 28th to the 29th. A walkthrough on the 30th. And then obviously the game on the 31st. They will fly back that next day. So look, if you're around, I don't know where they'll be celebrating New Year's Eve, Jeff, but if you're making the trip out there, maybe you'll bump into a Longhorn or two out there in Orlando.
Absolutely. It's Texas and Michigan in the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Eve, and we will be talking about it here on Texas Football and over to ontexasfootball.com. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends over at Von Lane for sponsoring it. If you're not a member, over at ontexasfootball.com, that's all right. You can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage all year round. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, welcome.